Hey, what's going on everyone? Tim here, and I just want to say thank you for joining in on this tutorial, and I want to say thank you to all of you who have been joining in on my other tutorials, all my past tutorials. It's been really cool to see the community growing, getting to interact with all of you, hearing all your comments and feedback. I've been really enjoying it. I've been enjoying making these, and this one today is no exception. We got the neon, of course. We always have to have the neon. But this kind of cyclone looking loop, just kind of coming at us slowly, really has a lot of morphing effects, really nice and slow. As soon as I made it, I was like, man, I can't wait to share this with you guys. And so here we are. So let's open up After Effects and jump right in. Of course, we are in the default layout, stock plugins only, so everyone can make this. That's always what I want to try to do with these. So let's go ahead and get started on this one. So we, of course, are going to start with a new composition. We have our new comp window here, so I'm going to click that. And in my composition settings, the first thing I'm going to do is rename this to base. As usual, that is what we call kind of our base composition here that we'll build off of. My width and height are kind of crazy right now. This is from another project, but let's go ahead and change this to 1920 by 1080. So we're just going to be in HD here. Square pixels, 30 frames per second is what we'll keep this at. And then on the duration, I'm going to change this to 30 seconds. So we can get that. So we're at 30 seconds on the duration there. And let's go ahead and hit OK. Perfect. So we have our blank, empty base composition. And so let's go ahead and build the loop. So we're going to build the base loop here, and then we'll add the effects in our next composition. But a bulk of the work will be done here. And it's pretty easy to set up. And then it gives you a lot of options to manipulate later on, so you can get a lot of different looks. So I'm going to right click in this timeline area and go to New, Shape Layer. And that'll give us this empty shape layer. Obviously nothing's in there. And so I'm going to twirl down shape layer, come over to add, and we're going to add a rectangle. This will be the shape we're going to build off of. So let's manipulate this just a little bit. On our size, I'm going to bump this up to 500. And so that'll be on the X and Y on the height and width. The position we'll keep at 0, 0. And on the roundness, I'm going to crank this to 130. So we have a nice rounded rectangle here, or square. Really what it is right now, but that's all we need to do here. So I'm going to twirl up my rectangle path. The next thing I'm going to do is add a zigzag. So come back up to add here, and let's go down to zigzag. That's all the way at the bottom. And I'm going to twirl down my zigzag here. And on the size, let's change that to 10. And on the ridges, I'm going to go 2. And let's change the points from corner to smooth. Obviously, we're not seeing anything here yet because we haven't added our stroke or anything, but we want this zigzag on top of the stroke, so it affects it. And so we have our zigzag. I'm going to twirl that back down real quick. I know I twirled that back up. So we have 10 on the size, 2 on the ridges, and then we're going smooth on the points here. And I'll show you kind of how that affects that here in a second, but I'm going to twirl that up for now. Come back to add. Let's go to stroke. Let's twirl down stroke, and we're going to keep the color at white. And all we need to do here on the stroke width is change that from 2 to 10. You can see now where that zigzag's coming to effect. So if I turn that off, we just have a rounded rectangle. If I turn that back on, we have those smooth ridges. And like I said, I'll show you that. So let me drop down zigzag. And on the smooth, if I change that to corner, it's just sharper edges really. And so for this one specifically, we want it to be smooth on those corners. So twirl that back up. The stroke looks good with the width and the color, but we are going to add a wave to this and kind of get this thing moving. And so I'll show you how we'll do that here. We'll twirl down wave. And on the amount, I'm going to turn that all the way up to 100%. And see we have those variations in the stroke lines there. And on the units, let's go ahead and change that to cycles. And the cycles, we'll keep that. Actually, let's drop that to 3. I don't want so many cycles coming through here. So, if I crank these up, you can see we get kind of what's according to what we're doing. So I'm just going to drop that to 3. So we have 3 cycles per side right there. And then on the phase here, this is where we're going to add some movement. And so super easy. All this is going to do, if you can see, just going to kind of make our wave move a bit and give us some animation with what we're doing here. So obviously the default is 0, 0. And I'm going to take my playhead in my timeline to 0 seconds and 0 frames. So right at the beginning. Let's go ahead and click that stopwatch where it's at 0, 0. And then I'm going to take my playhead all the way to the end. So that would be 30 seconds in that last frame. And we're going to go 2 revolutions on this. So we're going 360 degrees 2 times. And so make sure you're on that 2 times and not just 2 degrees, because you won't really have any movement at all. But let me come back and play this real quick. You can see we have this nice slow movement. It looks really good. So just a lot of really subtle variation, but once we get this thing blown up and repeated, it's going to make a huge difference. So that's all we need to do on that phase right there, kind of give our loop some movement. That looks really good. I'm going to twirl up wave. I'm going to twirl up stroke. And then the last thing we're going to do to this shape layer here is add a repeater, and this will kind of build our loop out. So right now we just have this one shape. I'm going to come to add and repeater. And I'm going to twirl down repeater, and you can see we have a couple copies there. So we have 3 copies. I'm actually going to crank this all the way up to 100 copies. And then on the offset, we're going to animate this in a second. But let's go ahead and change these transform options here, kind of get this thing set up. So first thing I'm going to do on this position, on this x-axis, I'm going to change up from 100 to 0, kind of get everything squared back up. On the scale, let's bring that to like 115%. On the rotation, I want to bring some rotation into this thing, because right now you can kind of see what's happening right here. Those waves are really lined up, so it doesn't look like much is happening except this kind of fan blade effect, which is not what we want. So on the rotation, let's go to 15 degrees. That looks good. Kind of zoom in here and you can see that. And so now we have that curve. Obviously that fan blade effect is still going, but it looks more like these curves coming through. And so that's our wave phase animation going through this thing. And so let's animate this offset to kind of get this thing pushing towards the screen here and make it look a lot better than just a static rotation here. So let's twirl up transform repeater 1. And I'm going to go over to my timeline, take my playhead back to the beginning, 0 frames, 0 seconds. And on my offset, let's change that to -80. And so we filled in that middle area there, which is perfect. You can see kind of what we're going for here. But again, we need this coming at the screen. So we're at -80 here. I'm going to click that stopwatch on the offset where it is at -80 at the beginning of my timeline. Take my playhead all the way to the end to 30 seconds on that last frame. I'm just going to change that offset to -65. So we go -65. So we're going -80 to -65. And so if I play through that, I'm going to drop my resolution real quick here just for a faster preview. And now we're kind of getting this thing kind of pushing at the screen here, which is nice. And then we have that wave rotation, which looks really good. It adds a lot of variation to this thing and visual interest. And I love how these kind of squiggly lines are coming off, meeting right at the edge and then going into the next one. So I love it. And honestly, that's really all we need to do to set up our loop here. Super easy, like I said. And, you know, you can come in here. This is where I said it's easy to manipulate. You know, play with that zigzag. You can bump up the size of those ridges. You know, if I go 30, kind of a different look there. Ridges per segment, you know, we can get kind of crazy with it, which is cool. But, you know, this will all affect your render time and everything. But, yeah, that especially will. Let's change it back to 10, ridges per segment 2. And just kind of keep this thing simple for the tutorial's sake. But I definitely encourage you to kind of come through here and play with these settings and properties and make your own look. So I'm going to twirl everything up here and we are good on our shape layer. So this is our base composition and we're going to go ahead and build on top of this thing in our FX comp. And let's go ahead and create that. So I'm going to come up to my project panel here and you can see we have our base composition. We have this new comp icon here. I'm going to click that. And let's name this FX right off the bat. And then we should have the same settings, 1920, 1080, 30 frames per second, and 30 seconds long. I'm going to hit OK. And so now we have our empty FX comp. I'm going to come up and grab my base composition and drag that into that empty FX comp. And so now we have this in here, and we can start adding effects on top of it. So if you've been following me for any amount of time, you know how I kind of structure my effects here. So this is all my personal preference. Feel free to do it how you want, but I'm going to organize it in a way that makes it easy to kind of troubleshoot and turn effects on and off instead of kind of going in and digging through a whole list over here in our effect controls. So I just use adjustment layers for that. And for this one, we're actually going to be using 6 different adjustment layers to build this look. So I'm going to come over here and create those in the timeline area. I'm going to right click, new, adjustment layer. and I'm going to create 6 adjustment layers here, each with their own effect that will be housed. So let's name these adjustment layers accordingly. And so I'm going to come down to my adjustment layer 1. I'm going to rename this to color. On my adjustment layer 2, let's rename that to distort. The third one, glow. Fourth, CC. Fifth, lines. And then this last one, we're going to call noise. And so these are all just going to house like styles that we can turn on and off to kind of get the look that we want. And some of these are optional. They're just what I like. But again, I encourage you to kind of go through and make this your own once we're done with it. But I'm going to show you how to set this thing up, how I liked it, and then you take it from there. So let's start with this color adjustment layer here. So I'm going to click that down in my timeline area. I'm going to click that color layer, come over to my panels here, effects and presets. And so since we're in the default layout here, it should be right over here in this panel. But if not, you can go up to window and then find that effects and presets panel and click on that and it should pop up for you. So we're over in our effects and presets. I have my color adjustment layer selected. And the first thing I'm going to do is add a gradient ramp. So we're going to type in gradient ramp and just that simple generate plugin. Double click on that. So we're going to kind of change the position on some of these anchor points right here. At the start ramp, we'll keep that at 960 on the X, but on the Y, let's change that to 540. And then on the end ramp, we'll keep that at 960 as well. But on the Y, I'm going to kind of, let's crank that up to like 1725. And kind of get a smoother ramp right there. So that's perfect. And so let's go to the start color here and change that from black to a nice orange. And I'll just give you the hex code that I used here. So bring this up here. We're going to change that from this black hex to FF8B00. And so we have that nice orange right there, and hit OK. And then on the end color here, I'm going to click that white box. And we're going to change that from the white hex to 3100FB. And that'll take us to like a nice royal blue. Let's hit OK. And obviously, we've lost the blue coming off the edge here and everything. And that's just because we have a linear ramp here. We're going top to bottom. And I more so want to go the radial ramp where we kind of get the whole thing. And so there's our nice blue into that orange. And that is perfect. So I'll play through that. I already love the look of that. Obviously, it's a bit flat right now just with that color. But let's go ahead and add the dimension and visual interest to this thing and make it look a lot more tasty. So all we need to do on the gradient ramp we have done, I'm going to come up to my distort adjustment layer and we'll click that. I'm going to come back over to my effects and presets. First one I'm going to add to this is CC lens. So go ahead and type that in and that'll be under the distort category. Let's double click on that, making sure we're on that distort layer right there. And it's actually a lot harsh. The center we'll keep where it is, but on the size, let's crank this to like 225, really stretch this thing out. And that's all we need to do on the CC lens. And then one more thing I'm going to do over in distort is a CC radial fast blur. So let's type that in. So CC radial fast blur. And that'll be under blur and sharpen. I'm going to double click on that and that will sit right on top of the CC lens. And this is a bit much right now, but we'll just drop this down. So center looks good. On the amount, let's just drop that to 15. And then on the zoom, standard is perfect. So all we did there is kind of just soften the edges, give it a little more of a depth of field, almost like a glowy soft look on those edges and everything. Right here, it just looks really 2D and flat, but this just helps give that dimension to it where we're kind of fading into the background. So that is all we need to do on distort. Simple as that. And so let's move on to our glow. I'm going to come back down to my timeline area, hit glow on that glow adjustment layer that we created. And then effects and presets, just type in glow. And then we're just going to use the default basic glow plugin. I'm going to double click that. And we're actually going to duplicate this and adjust a couple settings. So this is super simple though. We'll just keep it at color channels here. On the glow threshold, I'm going to click on that and change that to 55%. I'm going to drop my resolution down to half here. And then on the glow radius, let's crank that all the way up to 300. Kind of get some good blooms off of the colors there. And then on the glow intensity, let's change that to 3. Really brighten that up. And that looks good. And so I'm going to make sure I'm selected on that glow plugin right there. And I'm hit Command D right on top of it. And so all that did was perfectly duplicate the glow we had up here. and obviously, really made that more pronounced on the glow, but it's a little too much for me. So I'm going to drop the threshold down to 10. The glow radius, I'm going to drop that down to 80. And then on the glow intensity, just drop that to 1. So this looks a lot better. Kind of have the edges glowing more instead of this whole thing. Kind of giving it that neon look that we love. That just is so fun to work with. So it changed our colors a bit, which is fine. We're going to adjust that here in a second anyway. But other than that, this looks good. That's all we need to do on these glows. And we can move on to our next adjustment layer, which is CC. So I'm just kind of naming that color correction or color control, whichever one you want. But I just kind of pop this in here. This is optional for you. If you like this look, that's great. And I love that you like it. But I also like having the ability to change the colors and get a whole new look. So on the effects and presets with my CC adjustment layer selected, I'm just going to type in color offset. And then I'll bring up CC color offset under the color correction category. Let's double click that. And I'll just give you the values that I used here. But again, this is all up to you. Go ahead and play around with it. Find something you like. But I liked how this came out with this look. So I'm keeping the overflow on solarize. There's a couple options here. For this one, we're going to keep it at solarize. But on the red phase here, I'm going to change that from 0 degrees to 300 degrees. On the green phase, I'm going to change that from 0 to 50 degrees. And then on the blue phase, let's change that to 130 degrees. And so again, the reason why I did this wasn't because I hated this look, because I really like the variation in this gradient. But I just wanted to show you this so you can see how easy it is just to turn a couple dials and get some different color looks and everything. Super rad. I like that a lot too. So even with polarize, it kind of tightens up the colors there instead of losing them in the glow and the fade. Wrap is going to be super harsh, yeah, so you can see that. But definitely go through these and just find something you like. But I'm going to return to all my values here, and we'll keep it at that. So that's all we need to do on the CC. I'm going to go to my lines adjustment layer next, and let's go to effects and presets. I'm going to type in Venetian blinds. And so there's two here. We don't want the transition preset here. We want the transition plugin right here. I'm going to double click that, making sure my lines adjustment layer selected. And again, this is just more optional, but I really like the look that it gave. So let's change a couple values here. Transition completion, I'm just going to really lightly go up to 7%. You can see right now it's just adding these nice thin lines. The direction, I don't want them going vertically. Let's go horizontal. So I'm going to go 90 degrees on the direction. And on the width, let's just drop that to 10. And then we'll keep the feather at 0. And so this kind of gives it a nice like digital look, which I love. And you'll see that in the render. But I want to add some more variation within these lines. And so all I need to do there is go to my Venetian blinds, hit Command D, and we'll keep these the same as far as transition completion and direction. But on the width, I'm just going to change that to 15. So if I zoom in here, you can see we have all our main lines at the 10 width. And then on our second Venetian blinds, we have the 15. And it's really adding some cool variation within these. So love how that looks. Again, I just love that digital look this is giving with these scan lines going across, kind of distorting it. But you do what suits your preference better. So that's all we need to do on the lines. And the last one we need to work with is the noise adjustment layer. And so I'm going to click that one, come over to effects and presets, and just type in noise HLS. And that'll bring up noise HLS auto. And that's the one we want because we just want this grain to move on its own. And so I'm going to double click that. And the first thing I'm going to do is come up to noise and change that to squared because we kind of want a softer grain on this thing. And let's just change all of these to 5%. So hue 5%, lightness 5%, and saturation 5%. And then on the noise animation speed, I'm just going to drop that to 12. Again, you can just turn that on and off over here. Especially these top three, you can just kind of turn on and off as you please. So find different combos, and then anything else you want to add to this, just go ahead and create a new adjustment layer and throw it right on top. But if you do add another effect to this, say I do one more adjustment layer and you're going to keep the noise on or the lines, just make sure you're right under those two. And so it'd be just like that. So that'd be like new FX. And then you could just drop everything on there, keeping them underneath the noise and lines so that it's affecting that as well. So keep that off of there. And then the last thing we're going to do, I'm going to come up to my project panel, new composition. 1920 1080. Let's name this render on the composition name. Hit OK. And then I'm going to come up to my project panel, grab my FX composition, drop that into my blank render, and we are pretty much all set. So over here, if there's any finishing touches you want to add to it, sometimes I like to scale it up just to like 105% to make sure those edges are clean and there's no vignetting going on or any kind of silhouetting. That's not something we really need to worry about with this loop because it didn't seem like it was happening, but it's always kind of good measure to do that as well, just to make sure we're coming clean to the edges. So I'm gonna play through this one more time. And yeah, this is perfect. I love how this turned out. Let me zoom in. You can see we're coming off the middle here. That perfectly good loop where all those copies are making sure that we're not skipping any frames or losing anything in the repeater, making this just a perfectly seamless loop. I love that green in the middle, coming to the blue, and then back to the green and reddish purple here. Just giving it that light coming off of these strokes, which are waving through. A lot of variation, a lot of visual interest, and this is one you can just kind of get lost in. So using it as a visualizer, maybe a lyric video, something for your LED wall, maybe a backdrop to a concert or something like that. This is all up to you. So again, I encourage you to kind of go back to the base composition, go through the FX, manipulate, change values, kind of play around with this thing and make your own looks. But I hope this helped kind of setting it up and getting some ideas flowing on making this your own. So other than that, we're all done. We wrap this one up. Thank you guys so much again for joining me on this one. As always, you can find me over on Instagram at Timmy Dwyer. I love talking with you over there. Message me, shoot me a DM, comment on some stuff, share some work with me, tag me. I love to see what y'all are working on. Also down below in the comments, shoot me some feedback. Let me know what you thought about this tutorial. Maybe some ideas for future ones or anything you have in mind, or if you need help with this one and need some troubleshooting, I'm always here to help you with that. So drop a comment down below, let me know what's up. I also have my store, radloops.com. I'll link that in the description below, but you can head over there, browse around, find some cool assets. I got some free things, some paid things, all to help your creative workflow and kind of make your projects that much easier. We can all use that sometimes, but this one's wrapped up. I can't wait for the next one, but until then, you all have the best day.